That's whatever.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I'd like to call to order the first meeting of the Government's Committee meeting, February 4th, 2025, and it is currently 8:05 a.m. I am your chair, Victor Franco. I'd like to have the members of the committee state their name for the record.
Richard Cotwell, board member.
And I am Catherine Hedgeman, Executive Director and Agency Counsel to the Bethlehem IDA.
And since we are a committee of three, we have quorum. And now I'd like to have our newest member introduce himself for the record as well.
Jackie Hope.
Governance Committee member.
So we have quorum, and like to move on to new business. So the committee has a scope that I shared with at the last board meeting, as well as emailed out to all the members. Part of that scope includes evaluation of the new board, and evaluations are prior year performance and evaluation of the executive director's performance for the prior year. So far those, evaluation forms are starting to come back. The deadline is February 14th for anybody who hasn't submitted them. And then I'll be sending follow-up emails and kind of corralling cats, if you will, in order to make sure that we're able to comply with the all the regulations that we're expected to comply with. So in terms of looking at our timeline, so everybody has received their policy manual. If you look at the table of contents in the policy manual, they're kind of divided up into three different sections: organization of the agency, internal policies, and project-specific policies and procedures. So for this next year coming forward of 2025, what I'd like to do is focus on the project-specific policies. That includes the biggest chunks in here is our application, as well as the Uniform Tax Exemption Policy, or otherwise known as the UTEP. So, and then, as we see our progress on that, then we can always reevaluate, add other things to the agenda as we move forward. Any questions on that?
I just looking at it right now, I look at the revision dates. I would imagine that there's a lot of regulatory changes from the revision date to this date. How do we handle that?
Yeah, so are you talking about the things within section 4?
Yeah, I was just looking at section 4, which is our next project. Look at it, some go 2008 to 2015. Nothing's been changed since 2015 or 2022. I guess financial assistance. Plus, we had some changes.
Yeah, we did amend
Fees.
it, just the fee schedule,
Yeah,
I think in
2022.
2022.
That's right. Yeah.
The public authorities law in particular has stayed pretty stable. There hasn't been a lot of amendments and things to it or requirements. So while I think as I review these with you, you'll definitely, from a legal perspective, if there's something that I think needs to be updated, I would, bring that to your attention. But for the most part, there's really been nothing new, in the law regarding IDAs or the public authorities law. I do, this semester I have a law student, so we've began to put together a chart for the board on the bills that have been introduced regarding IDAs and what's going on with those type of things. So hopefully, if not at the February meeting, definitely the March, we'll have a list of all the bills that affect IDAs, so that in a summary, so that you can see that. And we'll watch them to see if anything gets signed or, changes. The last bill that was in the last session was with regard to the board members being a school superintendent and a union rep that died. So she did not sign it, I think is why it died. But that was the last real, of interest legislation that, we knew about. Everything else kind of died as well, like nothing really moved forward. So I'll have that, the board will have that, and this committee certainly would have it as we move forward, so.
So it's a delicate balance, right? You're right in saying that a lot of these haven't been updated in quite some time, but at the same time also, I don't want to overload the agenda so that we're not giving quality review to the things that are vital, like the application, the UTEP and stuff like that.
That was my question. I mean,
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right,
we'll do this
absolutely.
first and then
Exactly.
we'll see. I mean, the reality is, and that's why I was excited that you guys, are willing to do this. We didn't really review any policies or anything since I've been director. So it really does need to get done, so.
All right, so that's kind of like the timeline, at least for 2025.
Do we have homework?
Yes.
You will.
Yes,
yeah.
as a matter of fact,
We
look.
give the guy a chance, like he's
Okay.
just, he's gonna tell you.
So part of the homework, it was the documents that I emailed to everybody in advance. Okay, and that were for number 3 was review of the committee charter. Okay, so typically what I'll do, it'll be on Bell's board or it'll be emailed, whatever the case might be, whatever's the easiest for committee members, so that this way you have a chance to digest, to review whatever it is we're going to be talking about at the next meeting, so that this way members can come prepared to discuss and kind of like go through everything. So the first one is a review of the committee charter. It's a 1-page document. So when I first started looking at this, my first reaction was to compare the governance committee charter to the other committee charters that are currently in our binder. And one of the things that I've noticed was that there were other committees where their charters seemed more robust. A lot of it was, explanatory, like the finance committee or the audit committee. They're required to meet at certain times of the year for a certain amount of period, and so on and so forth, because of the nature of the committee. That necessarily doesn't hold true with us, but just wanted to see your guys' feedback in terms of what you think, if at all, changes should be made to the charter to make it more conformed with the other committee charters. So for example, you go to tab 6, that's the finance committee. And then on page 2 of that finance committee charter, you'll have basically, kind of like under meetings, the required number of meetings per year, the membership and what, what's allowed in terms of the meeting style, whether it be video conference or telephone, the agendas, the timeline for the requirement for when agendas have to be issued, the reports. All of this types of substance stuff is not included in the governance committee charter, and just wanted to see if there was any need to incorporate or refresh any of that.
Yeah, there's, and I can't remember, and I'll bring it up. The ABO has, a template suggested, and I think that this might have just simply been modeled off of that.
I think what?
And which is okay, but I think you need to add to it, like you're saying, Victor. I'd like to see at least quarterly meetings or whatever you want to do, Victor, every other month. And if you don't need it, then you just cancel it. At least we have it on the calendar. And, you know, there's plenty of policies we have to go through. So that's my thought on that. I think it's one of the most important committees as well. And it has been because we've had some openings on the board, you know, things like that come up, you know, other than policy and other than reviewing things. Trying to think of what else. Historically, what is governance other than policies? What other types of issues have you had to look at? Do you remember?
Go ahead.
Let's see here.
We've gone through the evaluations
Oh, that's right. Yep. The board
that's-
valuations and
discussed the exec valuation.
Yep.
Okay? That's really most of our time. You know, the reason when I sent you guys that email, the first bullet point about in age permit, that was based on my read of the committee chart, okay? When I did read it from your email, you know, my preference would be, I think this is good if you want to increase the number of times required to meet. Do we need it in the charter or should it be in, you know, action? You know, like, you know, when we do our organization meeting in February and we go through the committees, we can also work and say, well, we expect the governance committee 4 times. I don't know. We can have it in the charter, but then it's you know, it's almost like, then if you don't have it, you either got to pass on it, you got to make believe you had it by having a 3-minute meeting in a board meeting. You know, it's up to you if you want to make it more, you know, more, I would say more compliant.
Transparent.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
It's up to you. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that, and again, I'm not speaking for myself, but just thinking, you know, for the future, there should be a guideline in there in terms of the basic requirements, you know. But at the same time, providing flexibility so that if for some reason just nothing's going on or, you know, there's no need to meet, then we're not bound and nobody can ever say that, hey, you know, you're supposed to meet quarterly, but you never did, you know. So, you know, I like the idea of quarterly meetings. You know, I'm going to strive to have, you know, maybe monthly meetings, depending on how quick our review of the application goes and the UTEP. But at the same time, you know, that would be like the bare minimum is the quarterly meeting. In addition to the meeting requirement, also, you know, bringing the document into the 21st century. You know, because, you know, we are now live streamed, you know, maybe something like that should also be included in the meetings in terms of, you know, the telephone or video conferencing provisions, so that this way, again, it's a set of guidelines for future chairs to know that, you know, that is what's required of their leading the committee. So, any thoughts in terms of that? Okay. Okay.
So
and then
you would like the charter to say, you know, meetings must be live streamed pursuant to, you know, the general municipal law. Like,
Yeah,
is that what you're thinking?
yeah, and there's already kind of like a guideline or a template for that within the finance committee charter.
Okay.
You know, it reads, members of the finance committee are expected to attend each committee meeting in person or via telephone or video conference. So,
Yeah,
so
see,
that would be tweaked, you know, to conform with our current practice.
Because that was drafted prior to the live stream legislation. That's how old a lot of this
Right.
is. Yeah.
Right.
All
Well, I
right.
think if you do that, you should just put the meetings will be conducted in compliance with the regulation.
Yeah.
Okay, don't go into specifics.
Perfect.
Yeah, because then you'd have to change it back, but
Right. Right.
I'll also make a note, we gotta change the finance committee. We're gonna look at that.
Yeah.
maybe. Okay, all right.
Yeah. It'll be a balance of an easy one with a heavy lift.
Okay.
Easy one, heavy
As
lift.
long as you mentioned that, why don't we make it after the July board?
For the finance?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's and the next one will be the budget. But that way we'll have 6 months.
okay.
And then just the last change I was thinking was, the requirement for when the committee agenda and the supporting materials will be made available. In the finance committee, they require 5 business days before the scheduled meeting. To me, that's reasonable. And we can put that requirement as well in terms of the governance committee charter. So I think with those 3 changes, it kind of adds additional, kind of like guardrails, if you would, for moving forward. So as long as everybody's supportive, do we need to take a formal vote on that?
No, I think where the vote comes in, or the approval really, is when we amend the policy, we bring it back, you read through it, and you want to recommend to send it to the board for adoption.
Okay.
That's where, I think this first meeting, we're talking just simply about amendments and what we want to do.
Right.
And then you and I can draft it and bring it back.
I think for Jock's introduction, when there is a change in the board, we have to sign that, the governance committee has to sign that, whatever statement that come in.
Yep, that's usually done in the context of the annual meeting, yeah, for March.
No, but if there's
Oh.
been a change,
Like a new person?
a new board, we'd have
Yeah.
to notify the board, the supervisor.
Oh,
So we've all had to come in and sign some letter,
right.
whatever the letter is.
So when there's a new appointment, like a new member, or we want to suggest, like we wanted to suggest a new member, we need one, we send a letter to the supervisor who then works with the town board to take the applications. And so that's what he's talking
And the governance committee is the one.
Yeah,
we
so it
sign
signs
that.
it, yeah.
So that's.
Another
Have you ever done
duty.
that? You've done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you call it? No, to be honest with you, I haven't.
Okay, I know, I've signed a few of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll put that on note, add sending letter to.
So I don't
supervisor.
recall doing it, let's put it that way. Yeah.
I used to come in and talk to Robin, or else it was there before she came to work. I don't know, I've never met the new Robin.
Yeah, that's the procedure. I mean, it's the town board that appoints. We don't have that power, but they've always been very good about, what we think. So we'll send the letter to the supervisor. They'll usually post it. They'll take recommendations from us. We'll do you went through the interview process. So yeah, that is a duty of the governance committee, is if there's an open board seat, we would,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad we discussed it.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's why it's always good to have a balance of new and older members, to provide that breadth.
experience.
Yes, exactly. All right, good.
All right.
So if there's no other recommendations to the change in the charter, we'll move on to the next order of business, which is review of the current IDA application in UTEP for project review criteria. So this is an easy one. There's not really much to discuss other than, you guys have it in your binder. I believe it's online. We'll have people also upload it to Bella's board. So for some reason, somebody needed an additional avenue to get the information. And our next meeting is not until May, if I remember correctly, right?
Maybe.
Um,
I think it's the end of May.
No, it's the beginning of May.
Yeah, usually Victor has it it's probably
I
the
know.
Tuesday.
Yeah, so it's the 6th,
Yeah.
Tuesday, May 6th.
I will be.
Okay.
So, we'll have a good couple months to really review the application individually, review the UTEP, and then the purpose of at the May meeting, come back with some suggestions so that we can have a good give and take and kind of like refine, and put those recommendations on the table.
If I could make the 5th, but again, the 6th, I'm leaving to Italy.
Okay.
I might, if you want me to change the trip to Italy, I think I'll talk about it. Because I couldn't go last year.
All right, so we'll figure that out offline.
Yeah.
I know, and I think even since you've come on the board, you guys, Victoria and I did take a look at the application and the UTEP, and I know she had some really good examples of other IDAs, UTEPs, and some things that she thought we should incorporate here.
Yeah.
So what I'll do as well between now and that meeting is get her input so I can bring it back here. I'll send it to you too, but she has some thoughts on what needs to be done. And, I think, and before both of you were here, we did the port project and some others. And from what I can tell from the board and the questions they asked, about the applications, that maybe, we're not asking it here. Like, we need to amend it to get the information that you feel you need to make a decision. So I will work with Victoria to get those comments too. Only because I think you should deal with the comments here and pretty much be ready to propose it to the board, not show up and like she or someone else wants a substantial revision. That's not the way to.
Right.
Yeah.
No, a lot of the work has to occur prior to the meeting.
Yeah.
So people can come prepared to, advance certain, specific recommendations.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, the next item of new business, number 5, proposed process for remaining policies, reviewing remaining policies. So, like I said, after we're done with the application of the UTEP, then we'll have another round of things. We'll take a charter and then another, bigger chunk of this and review that at that time and constantly just go through and go through and go through. So it's very, very straightforward. If anybody has any ideas of what we should do after the application of the UTEP, please let me know. I'm definitely open and available to any suggestions or ideas.
The one that goes along with those two things is the financial assistance document. That's where the fees we charge for applications and, it says, it also includes a section on bonds if we were to do a bond deal. So that kind of goes with these. So that probably should be on the next round. We already looked at that a couple years ago, but we only changed a certain section of it. It wasn't like a thorough, we were just looking at a particular section.
Yeah.
So I think that definitely is up here. Maybe followed by the bylaws, but those are the top ones.
On the UTEP again. Without Victoria's comments and without any legislative required changes, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I can read it, I'm never going to be like you and be able to pick out, punctuation and stuff like that, but.
I found some already.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
No, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, my eye isn't as.
You can see why I really want to do this.
Yeah. But
My eye is not like yours.
But at the same time, because, even though I've been on the board, 2.5 years now,
Yeah.
I've never gone through the process of reviewing an actual application.
Mhm.
So I'm going to rely on you for your experience and kind of realizing, okay, well, I remember when I reviewed X application, I wish I had this information in order to make a more informed decision. So those are the things that we could talk about, like what is, in your experience, what was missing in the past, what information maybe we don't need that we can remove, stuff like that.
Okay, I was starting on the UTEP,
Yeah.
okay?
Oh, yeah.
On the UTEP, without regulatory and without Victoria's comments, I don't know, as far as the application goes. It's funny, we'll talk about that, and Jock's got a lot of experience in applications.
Right.
I
Filling
look
one out
for,
now.
what?
Filling one out now.
No,
Uh,
I look, what I may look for, okay, and what might be totally, of all the other stuff in the document, okay, may be extraneous to me, okay? I really could care less about a lot of the stuff, but there's certain things that I'm really personally interested in.
Sure. No,
Okay.
absolutely.
So that, line by line, I don't know if I'm gonna help you that much. I'll do what I have to do, of course.
Yeah.
But I come from things from a different perspective.
Yeah, and I think, and that different perspective is appreciated because of the fact that if, there are things you probably care about that I don't care about, and vice versa. So when we look at this from a multifaceted lens, we'll cast a wide net because of it, because we come from this or to this from different perspectives. So,
If you can,
The-
can you shut up for a second?
No.
I don't give about the economic analysis. Okay, 0.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, this is, I guess, like, when you talk about the UTEP in particular, you have the cost benefit analysis
Zero.
part of it. And then you have the two models, like we do a 10-year pilot and we do a 12-year pilot. Pretty much that's it. Anything else is a deviation from that. The 12-year enhanced pilot is sort of for that project that really would need it. You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense to do 12 years. Where I think one of the things I've heard Victoria say, and this gets into the real nitty gritty and why I was hoping as we move forward, she would come, even if it's just for this financial piece, because what I want to avoid is you guys deciding something and her saying, but wait a minute, blah, blah, blah. So I think one of the issues she brought up is when we do our pilots, when the actual payments on the pilots would be due. And it's a pretty arcane issue, but I think she is going to have some suggestions around that. And anything that we do with the UTEP, we really should do it on notice to the town too. You know what I mean? And the assessor or anyone that makes sense to have to review at least our proposed changes. But to Dick's point, you're right. I don't know that there's necessarily a ton of changes to the UTEP itself. The one thing I will say too, just to put on your radar, there's really, and this was another discussion, another IDA that is my client, the issue of housing. And, some are of the opinion we shouldn't be doing housing. Some, think, well, if we get a housing project, and we might very well get an application for a housing project. I've seen IDAs where they've not either done a housing project or they're not sure they want to. But they're trying to say, well, what is our policy when they have an application? And I don't know that, I just want to put it on your radar and that I don't believe that that's the best way to do it while you're trying to review an application. Oh, well, what is our policy on housing and how do we do that? Plus, housing a lot of times has pilots with it that are over 12 years. And, we would just do a deviation if you were so inclined to do a project like that. But I think as a board, you want to talk about it, and led by this committee, maybe. Good, right, wrong, or indifferent, however you feel about it. Because I think over the next, 10 years, even in Bethlehem, there could potentially be housing projects. And, it could, like another client, like, we're not doing it. It's not for housing. Okay. A lot of IDAs do though. City of Albany does a ton for housing.
You got a nice
So-
one on Western Avenue.
Yeah, so just to put it on your radar,
1211?
Oh my God, the one that's not done.
yeah.
That's the one I approved. That was on the approving committee.
1211.
So, just something to put out there,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
because that would wind up in the UTEP. Otherwise, you're kind of stuck with the model that you have. And a lot of times when applications come in on housing, it doesn't really fit what we do here. So you might just want to think about that.
Yeah, that was my conclusion from the UTEP. It seemed basic and broad enough specifically on industry. And, if you're looking to do housing projects, it doesn't fit. They usually start at 15.
Yeah, they
So-
start at, but they're, people who do housing projects want an evergreen. Okay,
Why what?
evergreen, they never want to have it, and, because then they can't sell it, they can't market it, they can't do anything. Yeah, once you do it, it's like,
Well, you gotta keep giving it to them. The second
right,
building has it, and the performance it's stuck there.
Right.
So even if they do a retrofit of the building, they're gonna come back to that.
Oh,
building.
sure.
So it never,
it's evergreen.
correct. But I mean, it's,
Plus, there's two types, we're probably more apt to receive market rate housing applications than we are affordable.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you wouldn't get an application for that,
certainly.
or even a mixed income property.
Yeah.
I've seen some of those come in too.
Yeah, I mean, with the cost of labor and material, there's only, if you're squeezing costs, you're gonna have to squeeze the tax costs, because you can't squeeze labor, you can't squeeze material, so. You're definitely not squeezing land costs, because no one's gonna fund it either.
What do other districts do? I mean, other agencies, if we were to look at a housing, okay, it seems to me that you really have to bring in the relative school district that the housing is going to be in.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's what we're doing with all of our pilots, really.
Okay, but
But
this one is
housing
local.
does affect, like, most of our pilots, all of our pilots to date have a neutral effect on
Yes.
on the school district because they're not housing,
Right,
right? So,
but if we do affordable, okay, look at, there was a whole big to-do about the affordable one that's in RCS, okay? Right? And they were up in arms, why isn't it in PCHS, Bethlehem School District, versus, because I don't know how many IDAs incorporate, are we in 3 or 4? We're at least in 3 school districts, between Gilboa, Bethlehem, and Lavina. I don't know if we're in New Scott, Voorheesville too, I don't know.
no, but you're right. Like, there's the whole, housing kind of trips all of those extra things. So, I, because of the relationship now that I've really worked to build with the town and the school districts whenever we do anything, because they were always in the dark, and then they would receive something and say, geez, this is an issue, or, so that's why, I've been trying to pull them in from the beginning and just kind of look at the applications and be part of that process. And I think with housing, that would definitely be a scenario where if the board was inclined after that first meeting to move forward with the project, at least to, hold a public hearing, see how it goes, we would have to engage and say, look, this is a project, could affect the school district. I mean, even, it's on hold right now, but even the Peacock property, the Blue Cross Blue Shield building, that was proposed as housing, mixed-use housing and commercial. So, I want to say maybe 2-bedroom, I don't know the details.
They're gonna build the city, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So the issue there is wetlands, the new wetland
Yeah, it's done.
regulations. But
Suburbs,
something
done.
like that would be potentially a housing, and it would also have a jobs and commercial aspect to it because of the, so it would fit. And, that's my whole point. If you're gonna do housing, you could say, well, we will, but it has to have this component to it, or, it's all up to what you want your policy to be. But that potentially could have been, I suppose, the toll gate, that I'd like to see commercial, but housing would fit there too, in that whole area, because there's other housing. So, it's big. Anyway, I'm not saying one way or the other we should do housing or not do housing. I'm just saying, from a policy perspective, when we look at the UTEP, don't be surprised if, the board comes back, or you all have a position on housing and what you want to do or not do.
Okay, but the housing, I think the housing really has an impact more on the application than on the UTEP, I would think. I have to read the UTEP, but because, as much as I discount the economic analysis,
Mhm.
okay, I don't discount the cost to the community on housing,
Right.
okay, as far as some sort of analysis of how many, how much, what's the school, there's a whole big stuff, there's a lot of data that you need to make that
Right.
determination.
And the cost benefit analysis for a housing project looks very different than.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
Okay, that the people are gonna have 3 meals a day at, McDonald's is not necessarily.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know what you're saying, yeah. Yeah.
Or they're gonna get their nails done at,
Right. No, it's about the impact on the school district and fire
Yeah,
and.
police,
and,
fire,
Right.
You
we had that, public safety was a big concern of mine with the port, okay? Was moot, but, who's gonna take care of it? And we had, the only people that really showed up public meeting, we had a good discussion as to what was going on if that project was ever made with public safety, how they're gonna pay, how they're gonna incorporate it, because that was important.
So, as far as the UTEP, I think where I was going, definitely the application. If it's housing, we might want to consider what we would ask for that, because it's not in here. And the other piece of the UTEP was, the only reason why I mentioned the UTEP is that 12 years isn't going to do it. And we don't have anything else. We just call it a deviation. And you could just leave it like that so that it's completely discretionary. But these are all things that, I think this committee should address, and if you want the greater input from the board, we would just put an agenda item on for a board meeting where you could present and ask questions and, do it that way. But
And
I
housing
just-
has different challenges, right?
Yeah.
You think about a property that has a 12-year pilot on it, they're gonna wanna get out of it within 6 or 7, so you're only gonna attract a certain kind of investment, and they're gonna try to sell it. And then you're gonna have either a private equity person in there, or, which you really don't want, because you pretty much got an absentee landlord, to a certain degree. So, to consider housing is it's like a whole another vertical.
There was it was the affordable project in Glenmont, right? They didn't even apply for a pilot. I was surprised.
You don't need, you can be at market rate in Albany,
Is
Metro
yeah,
is 80%, which is technically affordable.
yeah.
100 to 120, 80 to 120% AMI is affordable housing. And the Albany MSA, which technically means market rate is.
It's
affordable
almost
housing.
market, yeah. Yeah.
So the argument for affordable versus not, and market rate versus not, the real argument is the difference between affordable and luxury. If you want luxury, you have to go to Saratoga, and you're going to pay, or Loudonville, you're going to pay $3,500, $4,000 for, 1,500 square foot unit. That's luxury. Market rate and our MSA is pretty much affordable. So to that point, you don't necessarily need a pilot. Some can just get away with tax
The numbers
abatement,
would work, yeah.
you know, the numbers still work.
All
So.
right. Well, not trying to open a can of worms, but
No,
I
no,
just
I
thought,
I just wanna share that.
while we're looking at, and I just have a feeling in light of where New York State's going with housing, where, we don't have a ton of places to build, but you might see one or two applications as time goes on that,
Yeah,
But the
I
thing-
personally would much rather be proactive than reactive, so and this is not the first time that we kind of kicked around this concept, so, yeah, I mean, we should address it and have a policy in place.
There's more, which you all know very well, that there's more to it than real estate tax exemption. I mean, the sales
mortgage
tax
tax,
is,
sales tax.
Sales
yeah.
I mean, with the cost of materials, the sales tax,
It's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the smaller housing by smaller developers that I've seen in other municipalities, I would almost say, why bother? It's too small. Like at the end of the day, you're saving, it's, maybe $500,000 in taxes, like it's real small. I mean, that's another consideration, like, why bother? Or if you do it, it's because you really want to help and see the project get built. But the mortgage tax and the sales tax in particular, on the deal I'm thinking of, was much more important than the actual tax abatement. So,
And then there's thresholds, like City of Albany, I mean, they're thinking about changing it, but I think right now the threshold is 2.5 million in investment. So I mean, you're not getting small deals with, smaller landlords, you're getting the bigger deals, that are coming in, that, truly benefit from it.
yeah, I mean, the reason to do it would be you have maybe an MWBE developer that needs to get, doesn't have the capital yet. You know what I mean? It's a first project or something. There's reasons to do smaller deals, but at the same time, like for what we all have to go through to do a deal to save,
Yeah, and the fee is,
Yeah.
it's not cheap. So,
Yeah. So you might want to consider a dollar threshold too. But anyway, so I think, those are some thoughts. I will get Victoria's input and bring it back when we reconvene, and I'll circulate it too, but, and I've looked at it, but not recently. So I'll do that as well. And then I think we would come back and, I don't know, how do you want to do it? Do we hammer out the amendments when we're sitting here again, based upon the feedback? Okay. And then I can go back and get it drafted, and then we can look at it again, because that'll be sort of like a draft version of the amendments. Okay.
All right, any other new business or items for consideration? All right, being that there's none, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make motion.
second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain. All right, we are now adjourned
Thank you.
at 8:48 a.m.
Good meeting.